topic number 6. Moving on to topic number 7, we stick in the NFL. The New York Giants fire Garrett. Jason Garrett is the offensive coordinator for the Giants the last 2 seasons. They just fired him over after their Monday night loss to the Bucs. They fired him yesterday. And, I think it was Mike Florio who said something like, firing Jason Garrett is like if there was a mall on fire and the fire department only concentrated on the pretzel factory being hosed down instead of the entire. There's so much more going on than just what Jason Garrett has been doing. So, I know that they weren't happy with their offense, Brandon, but what do you think about the firing of Jason Garrett?
I mean, to piggyback on that analogy, I think it's like if the mall's on fire and they just come in and put out the trash can that's on fire because there's so much more going on with the Giants. I personally think you need to fire Joe Judd. I don't think Judd was even ready to be a head coach. This is one of those things where he got promoted because he was on one of the best staffs of all time, a staff that was winning. He was under the tutelage of the great Bill Belichick. So the Giants, in desperate need of find a great coach, said, maybe we can steal some of the Patriots flavor. So let's bring over Joe Judd, except Judd wasn't even ready to be a head coach. He was still getting himself suited and ready to be a coordinator. You know what I mean? This guy was a special teams coordinator. That is coming up in the NFL. He hadn't even been an offensive coordinator, hadn't been a defensive coordinator. This guy was not ready for the job. Once again, got a job handed to him. And I think, like I said, I think the Giants were just so desperate to find a good coach that they were like, let's just try this guy, like throwing spaghetti against the wall. Let's see what sticks. And maybe this will stick, stealing some of the Patriots flavor. They're not the first team to do it, obviously, with having, organizations trying to steal the top coaches off of some of the best staffs, obviously, right? Sean McVay's been having his coaches being poached recently. Yep. Bill Belichick has been having his coaches poached over the last 20 years, right? Right. You got the Miami Dolphins coaches, former Bill Belichick, right? At tutelage. You got Joe Judd. Reid. Yep. Andy Reid, former Bill Belichick. You got Joe Judd, former Bill Belichick. Josh McDaniels, when he went to Denver, former Bill Belichick, right? Now he's supposed to be waiting in the wings to take over the Patriots. I think he's got to start re-looking at that because I don't think Bill Belichick wants to go anywhere anytime soon. So it's like, do you want to be an offensive coordinator for the next 20 years? I think he's ready to be a head coach again, in my opinion. Yeah. I think he's got to start looking outside the Patriots organization. I wouldn't pick the Giants, though. This organization's not built to win. I don't think they have a great front office. They haven't drafted well over the years. I mean, they've got Saquon Barkley, but he's obviously been injury prone. I hate to say it. Their offensive line sucks. So it's just like one of those things. If I'm a coach right now, there's some other great options out there that I would look at to be a head coach. And the New York Giants is not one of them. But I still think firing Jason Garrett is like putting a Band-Aid on the situation because you really need to fire the head coach here and then move on and fix your organization top down. But I'll tell you what, I don't mind Jason Garrett. I know the offense stunk. There was really not much flavor to it over these last few weeks, and it was pretty much predictable. But I like Jason Garrett. I do think he is a good coach, and if he's put in the right situation with the right talent around him, I just think, I don't think there's many people that were going to be successful in New York.
Yeah, I think anytime you look at a team who's got a young quarterback and they're not doing well, the first thing the organization says is, are we developing this quarterback? So then they decide, do we either draft somebody who's not good enough or are we not developing that young talent? And I think the Giants are thinking they're not developing Daniel Jones. Now, some people think Daniel Jones is very talented. He's clearly very athletic. We've seen him take off with the football. He's got the arm strength, but he just he's in year 3. And you're still asking the question, is this the guy? And, as Patriots fans, I think right now we're like, we don't know how great Mac Jones is going to be, but we got our guy. We kind of know, like, Mac Jones is going to be the starter for maybe a decade, at least to the end of his rookie deal. Then we'll see what happens with contract negotiations. But, Mac Jones looks like the guy. You still don't know if Daniel Jones is the guy. And that's a problem because if he's not, you got to move off of him, even though he's got a big deal because he was a top 10 pick and he's got this big rookie contract. And you got to either, you've used so many resources to develop him and build around him. And now if he's not the guy, you kind of got to start over. So if you bring in another offensive coordinator or even promote a guy, I heard Freddie Kitchens might be the next offensive coordinator for the Giants. So we'll see how that goes. That's a great developing Baker Mayfield, but we'll see. And we'll see what he does with Daniel Jones. And see, he'll have a crack at it now. I think that's the biggest thing. If Jones was performing well, even if the Giants weren't winning, I think Garrett would still have a job. Now, that doesn't mean it's Garrett's fault, but that's how it goes. A lot of these coaches are tied to these quarterbacks. And that's the biggest thing in the NFL. That's why Josh McDaniels is going to have his suitors in the offseason, because everybody's seeing how he's helped develop Mac Jones, who people don't think has the same talent and athletic ability as a Daniel Jones. So, that's the biggest thing with Garrett and the Giants right now. Joe Judge, he was a special teams guy. Some people think that a special teams coach is best suited for a head coaching position because you're dealing with players on both sides of the ball. Your offensive and defensive players work together on special teams. There's special teams, units that are essentially on the offensive side. There's special teams units that are essentially on the defensive side. So you're kind of working with all the different kinds of players, and that's why they think that a head coach should maybe be a special teams guy. I mean, it's not a strict formula as to who's a good head coach, but Garrett is not the only problem. He might have been part of the problem, but he's not the only problem with the Giants.
I just think Joe Judge sounds more like, from what I've heard of him, interacting with players in the locker room. I'm not sure. Did you hear those reports about him like trying to fight people and fighting one of his assistant coaches and stuff like that? To me, that sounds more like a strength and conditioning coach in the NFL or a strength and conditioning coach in college, not a head coach. So I just don't think this guy's ready for the light, especially we're talking about one of the biggest markets in the world for sports, the New York, Giants, even the New York Jets. It's such a big market. You have to get the job done there. I just don't think Judd has been doing it. And yeah, let's talk about Daniel Jones. I don't think he even was a top 10 pick. Should not have been a top 10 pick. She was probably a second round pick. But we've talked about how the NFL is so quarterback needy and thirsty that they're like, hey, we got a top 10 pick. Maybe this is the guy. Let's go pick him before somebody else does. No. How about you evaluate real talent and see that this kid is a second round pick? They've got themselves dug in too much with him. They're going to have to move on from him and his big contract. Fire your coach, find a new QB, fix this organization. Let's move on to topic number 8. Here's another one.